Keep it locked. This is Mode London.
Okay, we're back. And we've got another special guest. Welcome to the new Guardz Radio show once again. And inside we got the man like Verral Paul-Walcott. So, first of all, I want to ask a couple of questions for you, Verral. We go way back, but let's get into that in a minute. Talk to us about how you got into. So you work with homeless people. You do a lot of work with homeless people. Yeah. What made you want to do it? What got you into it in the first place? Like, what was your entrance into that?
I'd say it happened by accident, to be fair. It was a situation where I had a cycling group at the time. We used to ride around for fitness, for mental health, I guess. And it was just a community group. We just rode around. And obviously through lockdown, we had seen an alarming number of people who were homeless on the streets of London. Was
it in lockdown that you started?
In lockdown I started, 2021, which seems so long ago, but it wasn't. And through seeing that alarming number and then having our government give a guideline saying stay home, stay safe, it was apparent to me that they were only talking about people who had a house to begin with. You know, given that government guidelines within a pandemic and then only being for a set amount of people in the population of England didn't make any sense to me. So it was more a thing of not seeing that and turning a blind eye to it, but making a fuss of it and trying to solve an issue.
Rate that still, man. And the thing is about it as well is that you do all of this because you do a lot. Yeah, you do a lot. We can't understate how much you do, and you're everywhere as well. But then you also have a full-time job and a family. Yeah. So like, you know, how do you find the time to do everything?
I get that question all the time. But you know what? I'll be honest with you. If it wasn't for my wife, I don't think anything would be possible because she holds everything down.
Does she? Does she like help with organizational parts of it?
Just everything. She's just that go-to.
Yeah.
She's
the glue.
She's the glue. She holds everything together. You know, and it's like she's just supportive. So I think if it wasn't for her, time management, would it be possible? Yeah,
it couldn't work if you had someone that wasn't supportive 100%. Of you doing that and working and everything else.
Yeah.
No, I rate that as well. Okay, so talk to us about C86s as well. Like how did that come about and how does that link into the work that you're doing with people?
So back in about 2018, with a graphic design background, that's what my degree's in. I structured a streetwear brand, which was called C86s at the time. I made this little character and didn't do anything with it because I fell into anxiety. And my anxiety was so difficult to deal with. It was one of the things where I just did my 9-to-5 job and went home. You know, life was a bit too complicated. Everything was turbulent. I'd got married. I'd moved house. I just had a baby with my wife. Girlfriend at the time, and it was the last thing on my mind. And then obviously through going through an anxiety route for the years leading up to 2021, it's just way too difficult. And I remember when lockdown first started, we obviously had to go and stay at home. And I used to call my wife all the time while she was at work. She was a health visitor, so she still had to go out. And it was one of them things where it was, I just stayed watching the news and stuff. And obviously I kept seeing the death tolls go up and stuff. So I got stressed out in terms of thinking that something was going to happen to her or she was going to get sick and I was going to lose her. It got me to an even more anxious state where I was stuck at home with my kids. I couldn't go out. And, you know, I think it was a 2-year-old at the time and obviously a 7-year-old. And I just found it difficult to have to do loads of stuff at home and not be able to be isolated. So I remember calling up one day, like frantic, like, are you okay? And she said, you know, when I come home, me and you have to have a conversation. And I said to her, okay. So I got worried again. It's like, what's she going to talk to me about? I remember coming and sitting next to me on the sofa. She said to me, look, I understand that you're anxious. I understand that you're stressed out. But what you've got to remember is you're staying with 2 kids at home. If you don't come out of this anxious state, it's going to affect the kids in the long run. And when they become adults, they're going to be having even more anxiety problems than you're having currently. And I looked at her and I said, you know what? Fine. And the next morning, I don't know what made me do it. I got up and I started a YouTube channel. And it was literally just me and my daughter going on bike rides, me teaching her how to do things on bikes and whatnot. And it was just, that's what we were doing all lockdown. And then the YouTube channel hit like 1,000 followers, which is when it gets to like a monetized stage. And I was like, how has it hit 1,000 already? I'm not even doing anything. It's
What was
just
the
me and my
time
daughter.
period and like?
Well, lockdown was
Like the whole of lockdown.
No, it was like within the ending of 2021.
Wow.
Hit 1,000 subs. And I was like, this is not making any sense.
Yeah.
And then people started contacting me through social media saying, you look like you're having fun, like in the most turbulent time of everyone's lives.
What were you doing in the YouTube channel in the beginning?
Nothing. I created that in 2021.
Yeah.
There was no need for YouTube prior because I was just working and stuff.
Yeah.
And where people were coming to me through social media were like, you and your daughter look so happy. Like, I can't believe you're happy at a time like this. Where'd you guys ride? I want to ride with you lot and whatnot. So that started happening. We started getting loads of people riding with us and whatnot. And then it just turned into a group of loads of cyclists, people who had never ridden bikes were now riding bikes. And the basis of what C86 is now is basically free handles. You know, it's the streetwear brand, which is the clothing, which is this. And then you've got the helping hands part, which is helping the community in any way. And then you've got obviously the cycling. That's it. Because any streetwear brand that is effective in society, you know, if you look at past history events with Supreme had skateboarding, Reebok had gym wear, Nike did athletics when they first started, Jordan did basketball. You kind of got to have your target audience to go forward. So it's evolved to where C86 is now. It's just basically a streetwear brand that helps people who are in problems.
That's amazing. But that's also like, it's interesting that it started with just you and your daughter, and then like at the timing as well. The timing was also important because obviously, you know, in a time of like dire, like everybody's kind of at home, feeling stressed, and people needed a reason to come together. And the fact that they saw you, that inspired them to kind of get out and ride with you. Like, that's 100%. That's a beautiful thing. And all right, that's amazing. Okay, so, and then all of these things come under the C86's umbrella. So where do you feel like you want to take the brand next? Is it just to use it as all of those, have all of those strands?
I think it's to use it as all of those strands, but I think it more so, obviously me being the owner, I can stir and shape that brand to wherever it needs to be. And I think, you know, I have those three elements. My main objective is to make sure that people in my area and across England don't have a poverty problem. So I think through my brand and through social media, I'll always push the narrative of it's not okay to treat people like this. It's not okay to have them living on minimal income, you know? Yeah. So I think that's where I'm at. I think if things get worse, obviously C86 will have to evolve how it helps people. But I think for me, I don't try to plan ahead because I feel like that's almost saying that the problem's always going to be there and you're preempting the problem to be worse. I don't want to preempt the problem to be worse. Which is just like me turning and saying, I'm going to say it publicly, you know, when you have a food bank that portrays that they've helped 18,000 people for the year, what are we celebrating as a society? Because you're basically saying 18,000 households never had food. So numbers don't work for us that way. We're supposed to say our numbers have lowered this year. You know, it's an essence of things are getting better. Not higher numbers, things are getting better. It's actually getting worse. No, for sure. And like staying on that as well, because you were talking about saying like it's not okay to treat, obviously it's not okay to like treat people that are poorest in society like they don't matter, or you know that they shouldn't have anything, or treating them in a way where we kind of demonize them. That's moving on to, you know, our outgoing Home Secretary, Suella Deville. How do you feel when like she says stuff like, or she was saying things like, you know, homeless people it's a lifestyle choice, and threatening to take people's tents away? We've already seen that people's tents are being like forcibly removed off the streets in certain boroughs and shit like that. Like, how does that feel when you see, and how does that feel in terms of, you know, because you're someone who is like helping, you're seeing these people every day. How does that feel? Do you know what? I think it's one of them things where you sit and you thank God in a way that He's allowed someone to show how evil you can be to a situation. Because one of the things that have happened from her making those type of those bold statements that she should have kept to herself, is that it's now society's based on social problems, yeah? And unless sometimes a social problem is popular, it's never spoken about. So if you think of retrospect, if she never made that statement, would we have social media go into a frenzy about supporting those that are homeless? So for me, it's one of them things where you say to yourself, right, it's a very negative situation, but she's also made me aware that our nation is still fighting the corner for those that are in a poverty problem. So for me, I'm kind of like, it's a bittersweet moment.
Yeah,
for
you
me
take it as a positive in a way to help people.
I can see homeless people now having a voice through mainstream media, saying, no, this is wrong. You can't be taking away their tents. They're standing up for them.
Yeah.
And that's heartwarming because in my line of work, and I wouldn't say line of work, but in the line of stuff I do for the community, and a lot of people across England do for the community, whether you work in a food bank, whether you volunteer, wherever, it's heartwarming to see the nation stand up and say, this is morally wrong. And I think from that standpoint, I'm glad she's resigned, she's gone, but at least your exit caused a complete catastrophic backlash to what you originally said, because you've now had to remove yourself because you've done so many things wrong and society are not accepting it anymore. So for me, it's not a thing where I feel isolated, where I feel like I'm by myself anymore. I feel like there's a ton of people that still have empathy, and they're all showing their empathy by saying that she's wrong for saying that. Yeah,
it strengthens people's resolve, innit? Like
100%.
in terms of like in terms of like the village, if we so to speak, it strengthens people's resolve. But do you think one of the things that she said was that there's enough support around for people who are rough sleepers? Like, how do you feel in terms of like what you've seen, your experience? Do you think that there's enough support out there for people who have, the people who have fallen on the hardest times in our society? Do you think there's support?
There's not. If someone's watching this now, if you just type in what a shelter looks like for a homeless person, it's literally a hall with loads of makeshift pop-up beds, like what you'd see in like an army camp, and they're all sharing that space. One of the things that people need to take into account as well is that when you put someone in a shelter, you put someone in accommodation, there's mental health problems that come with that from being on the street for continuous nights, where you've been beaten up or even urinated on sometimes, or even had your stuff stolen. There's a situation where if you're putting these people in to accommodation, you're not giving them adequate support that goes with that. And then what happens is when they relapse or their mental health gets the better of them and they can't stay in that situation, you then deem them with a tarnish and say to them they made themselves homeless now. And you can't help them again as a council. But the standpoint of more so what I'm trying to get to is the government doesn't think things through. Okay.
Never.
There are articles where the government has spent 30 million on getting homeless people onto vapes. Why have you decided you're going to get homeless people vaping? I don't understand
What's
it.
the point of that? Who came up with that?
But it's a waste of money.
Of course.
Okay? But then when
they love wasting money.
And then when you hear someone turn on and say that, when you turn on and you hear someone say things like, "There's enough housing and stuff," or "We housed everyone during COVID," or "The government housed everyone, we took everyone off the street." Well, technically you didn't. Okay, and I'll tell you why you didn't. When the government, it's a simple analogy. If you have 30 grand to get, if you have 32 boroughs of London, you got 32 grand, yeah? If you give £1,000 to each borough and you say the homeless people within your area need to come off the street, Tottenham is going to have more people going into accommodation in hotels than somewhere like Westminster would, because the astronomical price difference between hotels, right? So the clever thing to do would have been to take the 32 grand, phone up the tax office, who basically take all the income from all the businesses that are in the UK, and work out who makes the most money in terms of hotels. It'll be someone like Travelodge or Premier Inn. Okay. You then say you're going to give them a tax break for that financial year. They're empty anyway. You say, here's 32 grand plus your tax break will bring us up to, let's say, 62 grand or whatever. House all the homeless people with every single travel lodge that you've got up and down the UK. Simple. You didn't do that. What you did was you gave the money to each council, and the council proportionally paid for as many homeless people as they could find. And then as soon as the weather got back to normal, you kicked everyone else again. So you proved you can do it,
Yeah.
but you just won't do it.
Yeah.
Why? Because homelessness is always going to be used as a marketing tool.
Yeah.
We've seen films like Matilda. When he was going to get elected as a governor, you see him taking an orphan up because it helped his rating.
Yeah.
It happens time and time again in films, and it happens in real life.
Yeah. I mean, it always happens in real life, I guess. Like, politicians see everything as an opportunity in general. Like, you know, some more than others, but like things like that are just kind of policies for them to get re-elected. Do you know what I mean? So
100%.
like, you know, during COVID, it was the natural thing for them to actually help people once everyone's back was turned. Yeah, kick them all out on the street. But that was the thing when we in some of the countries after COVID, some countries in Europe still carried on this scheme of housing people, keeping the homeless, you know, housed. Whereas we decided that it wasn't something that we wanted to continue. What do you think going forward, if you, you know, say you were in office, I know, you know, I'm not sure you have any designs of being a politician, but if you were someone in office, what would your solution, what would be your policy, what would be the solution you'd want to champion?
I think we need to go back to the root of, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and work out what the root of all of these homeless situations are. There are people who are in domestic violence, who have fled domestic violence and haven't had the adequate support, which has now put those women or even those men on the street because they didn't want to go back to the domestic relationship. And I think the standpoint of structurally the way things are within government fell a lot of people. Yeah, even people who fought for our country. There's a lot of ex-veterans on the street, and I think it's something that I think one of the problems is poverty and homelessness. England aren't embarrassed by it. I don't understand how you can have a country that's maybe the 5th highest in terms of finances, but we have one of the biggest poverty problems. Right now, around the corner from here, I passed 2 tents. Yeah, in Tottenham on the way here. I'm also going to stop off when I go back. And it's one of them things where, is that where we're at now? We're in London, which is a thriving city, and we now basically have wild camping.
It's madness. It's actually madness. It is.
You know, so to me, it's like, to go to somewhere like Argos and to see tents popped up in the retail park, that's mad. When I was growing up, I never saw those things. No. The most I saw those things if I went Pendarren.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
So, I don't know. It is getting worse. And I think for me, the way I am, I'd mostly get kicked out of any MP movement, do you know what I mean? Just by the way I am, I'm a bit rebellious with it.
Yeah, going against the grain.
I don't really like the red tape thing. Because, you know, the work I've done, I'm not a charity, I'm not funded. I don't believe that we need funding to make change.
And that leads me kind of onto my next question is, so I've seen, like, when I've been looking on socials from time to time, I've seen that you've had a bit of back and forth and friction with, like, MPs sometimes. Like, how supportive or unsupportive, rather, has, like, your local council been, you know, on your journey?
They do nothing. They do absolutely
I'm pretty sure
nothing.
they want to take the credit when you do something as well.
Do you know what? It's one of them things where you think to yourself, you know, when you know behind the scenes things are crazy, and people do mad stuff, and then when you're in it and they're doing it to you, you're like, do you know what? Forget it. I emailed my deputy head of Haringey and my leader of Haringey in 2002. Yeah, they replied to me. They replied to that email. Well, the deputy head replied to that email in the beginning of 2023, which is nearly a year later.
Wow.
And do you know why?
Why?
Because I aired on BBC News.
Yeah, you baited them up, that's why.
Yeah.
Then they wanted to reply.
Then they're like, raw. Because they thought I was one of them problems that will just come and go.
Yeah.
You know, you come in, you make them look bad for a minute, and then your time's done.
Yeah.
My time's never going to be done.
No.
Because it's one of them things where...
They've messed with the wrong guy.
It's not that for me. I'm not someone that kind of picks up people and does stuff for doing its sake. I was doing this way before anything happened. So I think for me, it's one of the things where you're going to message me and say to me, can we help you with something? What are you going to help me with now? Because you can do nothing for me. You can't give me storage anymore. And all I was asking for, I didn't ask for any money. All I asked for was, can you give me a room or a garage? You've got loads of abandoned ones. Can you give me a room or something where I can store some toothbrushes or toothpaste and stuff? Yeah. Even that you couldn't do. You know? So for me, it's like, it's humbling because my community have seen, obviously, me grow up. I've grown up with my community. And it's a thing where they've all gravitated to supporting me. But I think they support me a lot more because they know the council, I wouldn't say is against me, but they just don't help. Yeah. And there's no way, and I'll smile and say this publicly, there's no way on earth I'm going to get this far and allow them to add their badge to anything. Yeah. Because a lot of people in Haringey and a lot of people in any council don't want their badge associated to nothing, because the half of the poverty problems that are happening with individuals in houses is because of the council. Yeah. The council have failed to put their benefits on time, where the landlords got frustrated and put you in arrears, or you've had to move out because this has happened. I don't want nothing to do with the council. I don't want nothing to do with the government. And this is why I do things on my ones. All the stuff you see me give out are things I've contacted people through social media and asked them for. And they've looked at my social media and said, you know what, you are genuine, or look for authentication through podcasts or BBC interviews and whatnot. And they've just sent them to me. Yeah. You know, just this week I've had 50 power banks delivered. I'm going to give them out to people who, they're from a company called Pulse. I'm going to go and give them out to some people who are homeless, who can't charge their phones and stuff. And they've got they can charge their phones and keep them while they're outside. Yeah. And that's just a common thing. It's obviously skill set with being able to network. Yeah. And that's what I've been doing. It's almost Robin Hood, basically. Going to companies, getting stuff for them and bringing them back to your hood.
Yeah. Listen, I salute all of the work you're doing, man, because it's like, you know, this is powerful stuff, the stuff that we need happening, and like MPs aren't helping us, the government ain't helping us. They aren't helping. They aren't. So, or not enough. They're only helping enough for it to be, you know, to be a headline to help them for re-election campaigns and for general elections and all this sort of things. But when it comes to it, they'd rather thief money and you know, do nonsense, do you know what I mean? And get caught in compromising positions with their secretaries and all sorts of nonsense. You know, like that. But listen, as well, like another thing I wanted to ask you about as well, because it's like, you know, I hope you don't mind me asking this, because I didn't line this question up before, but this, you know, it obviously runs in the family, right? Because I see, you know, you're doing this. Yeah. Your brother's also, if people don't know, your brother's Farron, doing the knife amnesty stuff. Have you ever spoken about coming together and doing, you know, kind of collaborating and helping each other, or like making it work in a way?
I think it's one of them situations where it's like, obviously it's been discussed, but it's one of them situations where it's like, when you're both in community programs, in a sense, with what we're doing, when they cross, it's almost like you've helped one, you've helped both. Yeah. Whereas if you stand on your own 2 feet with your projects, and you make more movements, because they're actually in different realms in a sense. Yeah. And it's not one of them things where you say to yourself, "Oh, I'm going to invite this one to BBC Radio and hopefully you bring his brother." Yeah. They both need to have, because they're such strong topics. They both need to have their own space, ownership in their own spaces. Yeah. But you know, hats off to him, man.
No, listen, hats off to both of you, and hats off like your family. It's obviously something that you're doing right as a family, because you care about people, you care about your community in ways that a lot of people, they might care, but they don't maybe, you know, have that drive to kind of go and actually affect the community and make things happen in a big way. So like, salute you every day, man, all day, every day.
100, man.
You know what I mean? I got like last couple questions. So This initiative that you're working on with restaurants with the coupons, I saw that the currency. Sorry, I read up about that, and that looks really interesting. Just tell us about that as well, because that sounds like something that could really work.
So, as a question, I'd ask you: you allergic to anything?
No.
Okay, so a common question we ask, if we're gonna go out and buy food for someone, or someone's come around your house, or someone's coming for dinner, you say to them, you know, what are you allergic to? 9 times out of 10, they'll say nothing. Yeah. But sometimes they turn around and say to you, oh, I'm gluten-free, or I can't have nuts, or I'm allergic to sesame seeds or whatever. So you make sure that they're comfortable. You make sure that they're equipped and they're going to be okay when they come around. No problems in a sense. Same as if we send our kids to school, we find out from the teacher if they've got any dietary requirements. So when the party happens, there's no kid left behind in terms of not being able to have sweets or cakes or whatever. But then the question then lies, if we're adults and we're responsible enough to ask our friends and family what we're allergic to, why is it when you go to help someone who is homeless, you don't ask them?
Don't ask that question.
9 times out of 10, it's you've gone into Sainsbury's and you've seen some reduced sandwiches, you've bought it, you've given it to them because you only want to feed the ego of helping. Yeah. So what I did was I had a situation happen to me about 2 o'clock in the morning, got a phone call through social media. Someone rang me through Messenger. Picked up the phone. Mrs. laying next to me in the bed. I'm like, hello? They're like, oh, you don't know me. There's a guy in King's Cross. He's got no shoes, no socks on. And he said he's hungry. I said, okay, fine. Turned to my missus. She's like, go. I've heard what's going on. Go and do your thing. Left, rid down there. And I approached the gentleman because I've been given a photo of his location, gone there, spoke to him. So I'm looking at the guy, he's on the floor, and he's sitting with loads of prep bags. Loads of prep bags. So I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I'm not going to judge. But he's got loads of food with him. This is not making any sense. Yeah. So then, before I could even say anything, the guy's gone to me, are you Verral? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, someone said you were going to come. Yeah, mate, I'm starving. He goes, before you say anything, you can see I got loads of sandwiches with me. I said, yeah. He goes, I can't eat any of them. I was like, what do you mean you can't eat any of them? He's like, I'm allergic to dairy. I was like, what? All the sandwiches were cheese, butter, egg. They're all made up of that. There was no egg else with just lettuce. It was just butter, lettuce, and tomatoes and stuff. And it dawned on me that these people aren't taken care of efficiently. The care factor and the looking at the finer details of things aren't put into place. Yeah. So what I did was I worked out, obviously through my graphics background, I had loads of clients on my books that were had restaurants within Tottenham and whatnot. So I called them up. One specifically, I called up Juicy Roots and I said, look, this sounds really random. We haven't spoken in a while. You know, I'm doing loads of work with people who are on poverty line. She's like, yeah. I said, look, I'm going to come and put £150 behind your till. She's like, okay. And I said, how many meals can I get with that? She's like, I don't know, we'll work it out. What do you want to do? I said, look, I put the money behind your till. I'm not going to take any of the food, but I'm going to go and make some coins and I'm going to give them to people within a 5-mile radius so they can come into your shop and get their own dietary requirements by picking off the menu and whatnot. She's like, perfect, let's do it. So we got that running. And that has now become a situation where I'm having people who are having to walk past their chicken and chip shops or their local kebab shops that can't afford to eat in them because they're having to live on food bank food at home, and they're able to get coins from me to then go and get this food from these vendors. And I think it's one of them things where, from a mental health standpoint, even on a Friday night, being able to eat a takeaway and watch EastEnders is something that you kind of look forward to doing. So even if I'm able to supply that for just that one occasion or the second occasion to make you feel some bit of normality to what your life used to be like before the cost of living hit your household, it's paramount. So I think that's where I'm at with it, and I'm trying to kind of branch that out to loads of other vendors and hopefully get someone like Deliveroo or Just Eat to kind of
that would change the game, because once you got them involved, then it's an umbrella.
It's game on. Yeah. So that's the standpoint. I think for me, it's working out effective ways of making things work without any funding.
Yeah.
I've never had any funding
And
whatsoever.
you got this far without any fun, bro.
No funding.
bro. God,
So
bro.
it's not a thing. And do you know what? You know, for the record, I say no funding, but this is how bad boy my community is, yeah? And I'm talking about people I've grown with. So I'm not going to name any councils, but a council wanted to help me with a van. The blue van you see me with? Yeah. So the stipulations they put in place, it's almost like you can't take the van out of an area, or you have to use the van within these places, or you have to give us statistics of the number of people you've helped, and all this kind of nonsense. So I turned to social media and I said, look, this is the situation. I need to get a van ASAP. 4 months, 14 grand.
Wow.
Done.
The village. It's the village.
And that's kind of where I'm saying to myself, you know, I had a journalist talk to me today. She was interviewing me for a newspaper, and she said, what's your biggest achievement? And I said to her, my biggest achievement isn't really an accolade. It's seeing how much my community have come together. Because I've been taught from media that my community is despondent.
Yeah.
But they are far from despondent. When you put a need out, they will help you, man. As you said, the village is much stronger than we all think it is, because we've been taught and portrayed that it's not that strong. But it really is.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And listen, before we let you go, I just want anyone who wants to get involved with anything that Verral's doing, can you let them know like where we can find you? So if you want to get involved in any of these initiatives, how can they find you and like try and help out?
So Instagram is C86ers, Twitter is C86ers as well, TikTok the same, Facebook is Verral Paul-Walcott, and for anyone who is available on the 22nd of December at 7 o'clock, we're meeting in Shoreditch in the graffiti tunnel at 7:30. There'll be a van there with proceeds, things like toothpaste, plasters, bottles of water, stuff like that. We're all decanting them into rucksacks and cargo bikes, and we're riding through streets of London, handing them out and supporting people.
Wicked. Get involved, man. Get involved. He's doing big things. He's helping out. He's helping the community in a big way. So yeah, make some noise for Verral, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, bro.
Love, man.
Big up. Yeah, we're gonna keep it moving. Let's keep it locked. It's New Guardz Radio. Keep it moving. Let's go.
Keep it locked. This is Mode London.